Hey everyone, and welcome. So, as an infectious disease expert, I actually spend a massive chunk of my day looking through microscopes at things, well, most people would frankly rather not think about. But today, we're going to take a journey together. We'll start way down in the microscopic world of cellular mutations and zoom all the way out to macroscopic global economics. We are looking at what is absolutely, hands down, the single greatest looming threat to 21st century medicine. Let's get right into it. 1,270,000. I want you to think about that number for a second. That is not a guess. That's not some worst-case projection for the future. That is a grim historical fact. Back in 2019, 1.27 million lives were lost globally, and that was directly attributable to the failure of our existing medical arsenal. These were real people whose bacterial infections literally just would not respond to the drugs designed to cure them. And you know what's truly terrifying about all of this? It's the trajectory we're on. Experts, including the folks behind the landmark O'Neill report, project that antimicrobial resistance, or AMR for short, could cause at least 10 million deaths a year by 2050. We actually call this the silent pandemic, because unlike an acute viral outbreak that suddenly shuts down the entire globe overnight, AMR is slowly, quietly accumulating casualties. Honestly, at this current pace, it could very soon surpass cancer as a leading cause of global mortality. So here's the absolute crucial point. This crisis, it isn't just about getting a nasty, untreatable case of pneumonia or severe food poisoning. No, it threatens the very foundation of modern medicine. Think about the procedures we've come to totally rely on. Cancer chemotherapy, cesarean sections, organ transplants, routine major surgeries. Every single one of these depends on effective antibiotics to prevent postoperative infections. Without them, these everyday medical miracles revert to incredibly dangerous, life-threatening gambles. Part 1. How superbugs evolve. Okay, so here is our baseline definition. Antimicrobial resistance is, at its core, a natural evolutionary process. Microbes, whether we're talking bacteria, viruses, fungi, they're living organisms, right? And they're driven by one singular goal, which is survival. When their environment changes, they adapt. But here's the kicker. While this adaptation is a perfectly natural thing, human behavior, specifically our massive systemic misuse and overuse of antimicrobial drugs across healthcare and agriculture, has severely, drastically accelerated this timeline. Basically, we are actively helping these bugs outsmart us through a process called selective pressure. Here's how it works. Step 1. Inside a population of bacteria, a totally random genetic mutation occurs that just so happens to offer protection against a specific antibiotic. Step 2. We introduce that antibiotic. Now, it successfully wipes out all the normal susceptible bacteria, but it leaves that one mutated bug behind. Step 3. With all the competition dead and gone, that resistant superbug now has unlimited resources to multiply and completely take over. By overusing antibiotics, it's like we're essentially clearing the battlefield so the absolute strongest enemies can thrive. Let's ground this biology in a terrifying real-world example, one that literally keeps infectious disease experts like me up at night. It's called CRE, or carbapenem-resistant enterobacterales. Now, enterobacterales are actually a totally normal part of the human gut, but when they end up in the wrong place, like your bloodstream or your lungs, they cause severe infections. Carbapenems are basically our heavy artillery. They're our absolute last resort antibiotics. So CRE are germs that have figured out exactly how to defeat even those last resort drugs. And just look at this. According to recent CDC data, a specific, extremely hard-to-treat type of these bacteria, known as NDM-CRE, is spreading rapidly in the United States. Just between 2019 and 2023, infections from this specific superbug spiked by a massive 461%. Let that sink in. This isn't some theoretical sci-fi future threat. This is spreading in our hospitals right now. Now, you might be wondering about that timeline, 2019 to 2023. That brings us to a really critical comparison. COVID-19 was an acute shock, right? It caused immediate, incredibly visible system strain. AMR, on the other hand, is the silent accumulation of gradual treatment failures. But they are totally linked. The 2020 pandemic actually poured gasoline on the AMR fire. It pushed healthcare facilities to the absolute brink. It led to longer hospital stays, challenged infection control, and heavily increased the inappropriate use of antibiotics. And as we just learned, more antibiotics means more selective pressure. Section 2. The Global Health and Economic Crisis. Now, behind all this microscopic data is a really critical human element out there on the front lines. Global surveillance and diagnostics are basically our radar against AMR, but the latest World Health Organization reports reveal this massive diagnostic gap, particularly in low and middle-income countries. Take sub-Saharan Africa, for instance. Only a tiny fraction of clinical labs there can actually perform the necessary bacteriological testing. So, without diagnostics, doctors are essentially flying blind. They're forced to prescribe broad-spectrum antibiotics just in case, which, you guessed it, further accelerates that resistance. To combat this, the WHO actually classifies antibiotics into specific groups. Access antibiotics are your targeted first-choice drugs. Watch antibiotics are broader spectrum and they have a much higher potential to trigger resistance, so they really should be used sparingly. The global target is for 70% of total usage to be those safer access drugs. But take a look at 2022. We only hit 52.7%, while those rickier watch antibiotics made up over 45%. We're over-relying on the heavy artillery simply because we often don't have the diagnostic tools to target the specific enemy. Compounding all this overuse is a really grim reality. The pharmaceutical pipeline is nearly empty. As these pathogens are adapting at lightning speed, we just aren't inventing new weapons fast enough. Why? Well, it's largely an economic failure. Because new antibiotics absolutely must be used sparingly to prevent resistance, pharmaceutical companies can't sell them in high volumes. So without those financial incentives, the massive investment required for research and development just isn't happening. So, what does this all mean? It means this biological crisis translates directly into a catastrophic economic crisis. Think about prolonged illnesses, lost labor, crashing agricultural productivity. It all adds up fast. Under a high-impact AMR scenario, we are looking at an annual global GDP loss of $6.1 trillion by 2050. Let me repeat that, $6.1 trillion. AMR isn't just a threat to our health. It is a profound, fundamental threat to global economic stability and development.
Section 3. Stopping the spread.
But hey, listen, this is not a story of inevitable doom. The World Health Organization recently adopted an updated global action plan for 2026 to 2036, and it gives us some really concrete steps to avert this disaster. At the macro level, we need massive systemic change. We must regulate global antimicrobial supply chains, and that means in both human medicine and agriculture. We've got to create brand new financial models to incentivize the R&D of alternative therapies. We absolutely must expand those diagnostic labs in vulnerable nations, and fundamentally, we have to adopt a One Health approach. That means recognizing that human health, animal health, and the environment are entirely interconnected. Superbugs do not respect international borders, and they don't respect species barriers. International cooperation is literally our only hope here. Okay, so let's talk about what this means for you directly. Because policy is vital for sure, but individual action is what actually relieves that biological selective pressure we discussed earlier. First, if you are prescribed antibiotics, take them exactly as instructed and finish the entire course. No exceptions. Second, never ever save leftovers or share them with someone else. Practice consistent hand hygiene to stop infections before they even start. And finally, keep your vaccinations up to date, because preventing a viral infection often prevents the secondary bacterial infections that would require antibiotics in the first place. We've journeyed all the way from mutating cells to trillions of dollars in global impact today. The miracle of modern medicine was entirely built on the back of antibiotics, and right now, that foundation is cracking. But we know the biology, we see the data, and we actually have the solutions. The only variable left is our willingness to act. So will you be the one to help protect the miracle of modern medicine for the next generation? Think about that the next time you reach for a prescription. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.